Lesson 1. My Testimonial. What's this lesson's goal? This lesson will encourage you to talk about your spiritual journey. Do testimonials have a purpose? When Paul the Apostle wanted to encourage the churches in Corinth regarding endurance in the ministry of Jesus Christ, he mentioned his own example in 2 Corinthians 11, verses 23 to 27. Such a personal testimony has many uses. What's our plan? This lesson proposes to discuss why testimonials are a valuable tool, how you can prepare one, and then how you can deliver it, and gives a sample outline. Why give a testimonial? A testimonial can be an icebreaker for a new preacher in town, or an encouragement from a preacher who's been around for decades. It's also a good way for potential leaders to get used to being in front of a group of people, whether or not they'll ever be great preachers. It's an opportunity to tell about your personal knowledge of the hand of God. It's not a time to puff yourself up or be a spiritual show-off, but a time to build the faith of those who will hear specific experiences of God's providence in your life. There is a warning. Testimonials in the hands of some people have been used for self-glorification about some real or imagined spiritual gift, or to take pride more in human effort and good works rather than Christ. The term used in the Bible for a testimony is a legal term, such as an eyewitness might use in a courtroom regarding things they have experienced. Just as in court, people can give true or false testimony. It's important to emphasize true testimony about God, not support for urban myths and bad theology. Israel testified about God's goodness in Psalm 79, and the apostles gave testimony about the risen Lord in Luke 24, verse 48, John 15, 27, and Acts 1, verses 8 and 27. So as to remain consistent with Scripture and good doctrine, it's important that anyone giving a testimonial in a church check with the pastor or priest ahead of time. Appropriate testimonials would include stories of trials or difficulties, answered prayers, God's help, experiences of sin and forgiveness, confessions of faith, conversion stories, and God's guidance. How do we prepare? Examine your Christian calling and any special experiences which may encourage the faith of others. Is there a verse of Scripture that stands out or has particularly encouraged you? If so, you've already made a good start. If you can't think of one, don't worry about it at this stage. The important thing is that you have the rest of the message almost finished, because the subject matter, your life, is very familiar to you. You may want to tell how God led you to Himself. You may want to tell about a childhood or other experience with God. You may want to tell about a particular church experience. Leave out details that might embarrass you or anyone else. Never give lurid details of personal sins. Not only can it seem like voyeurism or even bragging about the magnitude of past sins, but it can come back to haunt you later. Now all we have to do is organize it. If you have 10 minutes allotted for a testimonial, simply take the time and divide it by the number of stories or parts of your story you want to tell. Many speakers believe they'll never fill 10 minutes and then end up going way over time, taking 20 minutes or a half hour. Don't go overtime. Going overtime is stealing time from the rest of the service, from the main sermon if there is one, and from the time the congregation devoted to prepared music, prayers, scripture readings, or other items of worship. If someone in charge says to take as long as you want, realize that too has limits. It's best to be gracious and stick to a reasonable time of about 10 minutes maximum for a testimonial by a lay member, or the usual sermon length for a guest preacher giving his testimonial as a full-length sermon. A little organization will help you keep within this allotted time. If you're a beginner and only speak for a few minutes, that's excellent. Short is always better than long. On the other hand, if you're the main speaker and introducing yourself to a new congregation, ask what the usual allotted time is and stick to it. Going overtime on your introductory sermon only gives a bad impression, no matter how great a preacher you may think you are. If you're a long-time preacher in this congregation, you're already fully aware of the local time customs. How can we deliver a testimonial? Be yourself. Someone once suggested that a person stand up, read a scripture, tell a story, shut up and sit down. It was a rather blunt but valuable suggestion for a testimonial or sermonette. What's an example sermon? I may suggest the title, Like a Mustard Seed. Let's read Matthew 13, verses 51 and 52, the parable of the mustard seed. Take about a minute to do that. Tell how God's kingdom in me began small, like a mustard seed. About 3 minutes. Tell how God's kingdom in me has grown, like His kingdom is growing all over the world. Another 3 minutes. Tell how I'm thankful to be a part of God's growing kingdom. And pray. About a minute. Then simply say, thank you. Here's a suggested assignment. If you're in a classroom situation, depending on the size of your class and time constraints, give a 5 or 10 minute testimonial. If you're in a church situation, depending on the approval of leaders, give a 10-minute testimonial. In a new pastoral assignment, give a perhaps half-hour introductory sermon using principles found in this lesson. Let's wrap it up. A testimonial, as either an example in a sermon or as a whole sermon, is best given on a rare basis. Otherwise, it just seems like we're self-centered egomaniacs. That's it. Just end with a one-sentence summary, a note of thanks, or restate the verse if you want. If you feel comfortable enough, you could also close with a brief prayer of 2 or 3 sentences. Realize that we're to promote Christ and not ourselves.